Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Chaps Chat Cats. We are a part of the Hoops Crew Media Network. My name is Jake, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by Sambo and Johnny. How are we, chaps?
Good. Sorry, I didn't hear Johnny. Then I saw John's mouth move, but I didn't hear anything come out. So
I was waiting for you to move, say how you were, and then I'll step in after.
Look, it's the preseason, all right. This is our, it's our pod sim. Is what you're here for. We're just blowing out the cobwebs, remembering how all this works. I'm good.
We're not going to be at 100%. We'll be about 50, 60%.
Mate, we're not at 100% when we're in season. All right. We always keep something in
What are
reserve,
you talking about, Sam?
just in case. I'm talking about
we keep it
firing.
What I mean is, John. What I mean is how fucking good our content is, and that's not even all of it. That's not everything we could muster. Okay, that's what I'm saying here. I'm saying if you want to get the 100%, you probably got to pay the Patreon.
So say it's 95%. We run at 95%. Just humming along there.
Yeah.
Actually, I want that extra 5%.
95.8
Patreon
on a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. You can of course go on and sign up for the Chaps Chat, the Hoops Crew rather, the Hoops Crew Patreon membership. It's over on patreon.com. The Hoops Crew, you get access to extended versions of the podcast, video versions of the we get video versions here on YouTube, extended versions of the pod. You get VFL men's and women's match coverage throughout the season. So you should definitely go on and do that.
And something I should definitely do now. 4.2 to 5% effort from us as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Goes from 95% to about 99.2%. We always keep a little. That 8% for us as artists. You've got to keep that 8% in the holster. Yeah. 0.8% rather. 0.8% is what the rest of life gets. 99.2% is it goes on the podcast, 0.8% to everything else. But now I'm going to hand pass. We're going to mix it up, just like the match sim, whereas like player rotation all over the place. We're doing something different. We're throwing Sambo into the big chair tonight.
Tom Stewart into the midfield.
Yeah,
that's right. Tom Stewart's going into the midfield. So there you go.
A big call
Sambo,
from you, Sam.
Over to you.
A lot of pressure on you now.
I am the Tom Stewart of this podcast. I'm excited. Look at me.
Definitely the most likely out of the three of us to take it down, Preston.
I feel Jake very just hiding that annoyance deep down, pushing it down as he goes, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, I am the Tom Stewart here. Anyway, the Cats took on the Blues in a absolutely blistering, from all reports, blistering and just scintillating game. Just to throw it over to you guys. Just first of all, general thoughts. Like, don't go too nitty gritty because I'd like to throw some specific questions after that, and we'll get into it. But as we know, the reason I'm hosting it is because I did not find the time nor the effort to watch the game. So nice I'm a neutral observer here. I'm here to learn about what went down on the on that fateful day.
Well,
cool.
I think who wants to go first? I'll go throw to Jake first.
Nice. All right, I'll paint you a picture, Sam. And I thought this was the good reason, a good way to do this, because you are coming with genuine questions. I don't have, normally I have to fake questions. I know what happened, but I'm having to throw questions out. That's right. So, very low tempo kind of match is what I would say. That was my initial takeaway. Is pre-seasons are always a bit like this for me, where it's like, oh, I can't wait for Sport X to be back, and we've got the preseason match coming. That'll be a good taste. And then you watch and you're like, oh, that's right. This is almost nothing like what the actual thing is going to be like in 3 weeks. yeah. In many ways, it was really it was hot as Hades at Icon Park, and
peaked
I think
38 degrees, I believe.
Yes, peak 38 degrees. It was a sweltering sort of conditions, and I think the players probably suffered under it. Disposal was a bit off. One thing I thought in general, as a general thought, it was really difficult to get a strong read on some of our contested ball work because so much of the game was just played slingshotting between the arcs of 50. There wasn't, I didn't find it was like a repeated stoppage game where you're getting to see people do lots and lots of body work at contests and that sort of thing at stoppages. It really was just one end to the other for large stretches. The Cats really took over for large stretches. I think John kicked the next 5 goals and ended up winning by 17 points. So it looked a little bit early like we were going to get put to the sword. And then in the end, Cats just sort of took control over the next 3 quarters. I think we might have kicked 4 goals in the first quarter, 4 or 5 goals in the first quarter. And after that, yeah, it was our game mostly, I would have said.
Yeah, basically. It was pretty not substandard. Oh yeah, it was a pretty substandard game of football. We knew that both teams were going into this knowing it's a match sim, not to take it too seriously, and it really showed out there. Both teams just went out there. It was more of a hit up against different players apart from your own teammates. The tackles weren't really hard hitting, bone crunching tackles. The chase downs weren't really there. Like there was players who would chase hard for a bit, and then sort of just like, yeah, it's too hot. No point in hurting yourself in this match sim. Doesn't mean anything. It's just more of a basic get your fit, see how your fitness is, see how your kicking is, see where you are in terms of knowing the game, especially for the young guys. And that was, yeah, it was just a very chill, relaxed game. No one really went overboard on anything. There was no real, you know, silly things done by any players. No stupid rough tackles.
Johnny itching to have a go here at Sam Pepper.
We'll get to that later on.
No real players, right? None of the players from the real team did it.
From the real teams did it. Yeah, it was just, you could just tell that both teams were just going, it's bloody hot. Let's not run our guts out. Let's not hurt each other. Let's just get through this, see where we're both at, test each other out a little bit. And yeah, there was some exciting moments throughout the game as well. Like there was some really nice ball movements by the Cats and Carlton. You could see the idea behind both teams going into 2024 is pretty exciting. But we only saw very short glimpses of that. Apart from that, a match sim. It's a big training session against another team. And everyone got out pretty healthy except for Cam Guthrie. Unfortunately.
Well, I'll pump the brakes on the Cam Guthrie discussion a little bit. We will get into it, and I believe that there's some Cam Guthrie specific discussion to be had behind the Patreon glory, the curtain, the glorious curtain to hide the prestige of the Patreon section. But like after our ringing endorsement of the match sim, and I will say a match sim isn't necessarily scintillating, but before we risk losing listeners, there's nothing more scintillating than listening to us dissect this very, very important element of the AFL season. Don't go anywhere. Don't change that dial. Look, I mean, part of this, I will be honest, Jake. Part of this is stuff that I will be faking, as you say. There is some things that I do know, but I'm going to lean into it a little bit. So let's go all the way after that sort of rough general overview. Let's go all the way back and talk about some of the selection stuff. Was there? I'll go to you first this time, Johnny. Was there starting? I know you guys talked about a lot of rotation that happened during the game, but was there anything that stuck out to you as noteworthy with the starting lineup and where people headed out onto the ground to start the match?
I thought it was an interesting move to have Max Holmes playing sort of that half-back role. It's sort of a bit of a more of an evolution of how he's going to fit into this team. And I thought he did all right. There was moments where he got the ball at half back and was really able to use his pace to get around some players, get away from them, and then unfortunately, the few times he did that, he turned it over with a long kick. So I think they'll be able to look at that and go, instead of just going for that long kick, looking bored, there might be a quick handball or a shorter kick that can work. And a lot of the time there was a player free in like sort of the corridor area that he could have gone to. So I think that could be really exciting to see Max Holmes coming off the half back throughout the season. But then he did move back into the wing and he looked pretty good there as well. I feel like Max Holmes is finding his form, which is pretty exciting. Dangerfield and Hawkins didn't play the first quarter. I think they just stayed on the bench. Came on second quarter, looked all right. Toby Conway started. Tom Stewart did not start in the midfield. He played down back for most of the game. And the rest were pretty much stock standard. It had Jai Clark in the middle. Jack Bowes was in the middle as well, alongside Tanner Bruin. I thought all of them held themselves pretty well. I feel like Jack Bowes stood up fairly well. Still made a few errors here and there, a bit getting that rust off. But I also feel like that the more the game went on, he found his spot a bit better. But I think I would say no one of the young brigade has put their foot forward for round one. That's still wide open. It could be anyone's spot. But apart from that, it was all pretty standard.
And what about you, Jake? Did you have anything with the selection to add to Johnny or I can give you a specific question?
I'll just tag a couple of thoughts on with Johnny. I did think it was interesting to line star midfielder Tom Stewart up down back all afternoon. Seems to be grasping the complexities of playing. I know, really. Sometimes it just takes you by surprise. So that was a tactical masterstroke. Tommy Hawk did play first quarter, but I think that was about all he played. Yeah,
sorry,
in fact, in that first quarter, no, you're right. I was just going to say, but one of the things that stuck out was he kicked 2 goals. And I don't know if they were both in the first quarter, but he definitely, he looked fit. I think it was a nice mark on the lead, followed up by a lovely set shot goal. The Max Holmes one was pretty interesting. I thought you could see what they're trained to do. Down back, with him. But yeah, he really did sort of, I think I put a tweet out about it at the end of the game, was everyone sort of going, what is, this isn't going to work, having him down back. The disposal is just, off. The disposal is not the disposal issues aren't a new thing. He went at 54%, I think, kicking efficiency last season. So the kicking can still at times be an adventure. When you can kick as long as he can, when you run as fast as he can, you're going to be inclined to take some risks. But I thought you could see the advantages of what he offered down back, particularly in a side that now lacks Isaac Smith. But yeah, as Johnny said, once he moved back into the familiarity of the middle and forward half of the ground, he carved it up in the last quarter and looked really dangerous. So that was the only couple of things I would have added on to what Johnny was saying about the selection stuff.
Sure. Well, I'll starting with you again, Jake, still on the subject of who was out there and where, what, and this is because we discussed it somewhat at length a couple of episodes ago. How do you? What was the ruck display like, and how do you feel about it after this?
Really interesting. Reece Stanley, I think it was one of the early tweets I fired out, was looks fit, looks mean and lean. And I instantly thought of you. I feel like you've been one of the biggest Reece Stanley defenders on the podcast, and he looked great. He was getting around the ground so well, following up his ruck work on the ground, just seemed to be covering the surface of the field, like really easily. Didn't look to be laboring or anything like that. Just looked fit as I've seen him in the last few seasons. So he looked really good. And conversely, Conway probably had the biggest struggle game that I've seen him have. I've watched him a few times in the VFL last season, his one AFL appearance last year, and something that always stands out to me is that he almost seems overdeveloped in terms of, or ahead of development in terms of his work one-on-one in the ruck. And Tom de Koning really, I thought, out-rucked him, like just out-wrestled him multiple times. You just didn't see that happening last year in the VFL. And it's not like an alarm bells thing for me where I'm like, oh God, Toby Conway's not going to come through and be a good ruckman. Like, I just think he had a bit of a dirty day in the hot, sweaty conditions. And it's probably one that he'll look back and go, oh, he might not look back at it all being a match sim, but I think it was an anomaly. But it did make me sort of go, I guess, double down on our general take about the ruck room is that if you're going to get it, you're going to have to earn it. You are going to have to push Reece Stanley out of the side. That's the only way it's going to happen. I think to really take a step forward, he needs to grow the hair a bit and wear a headband because it just seems like every second strong player is now.
Tanner Bruins caught that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tanner Bruins got it going. But yeah, that was my thoughts on the ruck duel. I thought Reece Stanley really just classic, I guess. The veteran puts his best foot forward at the first opportunity, and the youngster probably struggled a little bit more than I've seen him previously.
Yeah, well, I guess when you're pretty experienced, you're not going to get nerves at the best of times, let alone in a match sim. You're probably going to be at your loosest and and most freewheeling, and probably puts another sort of like, I guess, a little mark next to what I was talking about I would definitely never sniff at them keeping Stanley in the side, even if he does sort of get pushed out of that main ruck role. Keeping Stanley there in the side or as a medical or as an emergency, because of his versatility. Like, if you had to roll him forward or back, or like, I just think he's somewhat undervalued. And I think it's overlooked that he has like, I'm correct in saying that he's been nursing on and off injuries for at least the last 2 seasons, right? If not the last 3. That he's missed.
Yeah, most likely.
He's missed like chunks of games for the last few seasons. So I think that can't be overlooked, especially when Jake. Yeah, like that really that was really a really disruptive one. And then just in terms of like his movement, you were saying, Jake, he looked really free and fit and sort of able to move around the ground and stuff. I think that's one of the things that maybe looked a little inhibited last year, and maybe, with hindsight, maybe that was, nursing a knee or an ankle or something that was sort of not enough to keep him out of the game, but enough that he was conscious of it. So, did you have anything else to add to the ruck conversation, John, before I move on?
Nah, Jake pretty much summed it up perfectly. Reece Stanley looking fantastic, and Conway still way behind Stanley in terms of full ruck potential. But
well, I was going to kind of go through the. Sorry. Yeah.
No, you're right. I've all done.
Was going to go through the positions and talk about each of the sort of the areas of the ground, but I feel like with the talk of headbands, we've segued into one of the other areas I wanted to talk about, which was. And I'm pretty sure there's a lad in here that Jake's going to want to talk about, but I will start with you, Johnny.
I'll leave that one for Jake.
You can leave that specific player for Jake that fits into this category. There's been some posts on Instagram that make me think Jake probably wants to talk about that particular player that fits into this character, but this category. But the youth specifically, starting with you, Johnny, like some of the young guys, you said you didn't feel like. Earlier, you alluded to that you didn't think that any of the young guys really set the world on fire and staked a flag in a position anywhere. But in general, and then with some specific players as well, how did the young guys look?
It was mainly just like the first year players, like O'Sullivan, possibly even Jai Clark and Mana, and who else do we get? Conway as well could lump in there. They all looked all right out there, but they all you can still tell they're not fully developed just yet. They're not fully ready, which is fair enough. They're still really young guys, and you can just tell they're still working out the system, still working out how the AFL game works. So this was a good knockout hit out for them, and yeah, they didn't set the world on fire. Like, we're all hoping that these guys were going to come in and solve every issue, and reality hit, and fact is they're not. I think Mana still looked the best out of those guys, being the more mature age recruit. Did some really good things, put his best foot forward, but as I said, could have possibly done a bit more. But it's hard to tell in a match sim as well, because how hard are they pushing themselves as well to go, is this a really important match sim or is it not? And I feel like the coaching staff would probably don't stress too much about putting your best foot forward. Just go out there, see how you go, test the AFL level out. But the other guys like Bose, Bruin, Myers, Close, Henry, Shannon Neal, I thought they all looked really good. Shannon Neal's packed on the gains. He's looking very beefy. Did some really good, took a couple of really good marks, kicked a nice goal. Probably could have kicked a couple more. But apart from that, he looked pretty solid. You can tell there's still a lot more growth and development to go into him. But when he does get his body up to the weight he needs to, he's going to be an absolute beast of a player. And he did some ruck. He moves around the ground really well. I feel like he could shine in the next few years. Oliver Henry, again, just did what we were hoping he'd do, really, in a match sim. Took an absolute blinding one-handed mark. Don't know how he took it, and slotted a nice goal and took a couple other really good marks. Tanner Bruin really settled into that position in that midfield and really stepped up after Cam Guthrie sort of went down. You could really tell he really wanted to put his best foot forward and stake a claim on that position, which I think a threat from Mana, Jai Clark, and a few others has pushed Bruin and Bose on a bit, giving them a bit of a kick up the butt. And then Close was just Close. We all know what to expect from Close and Grind Myers. Those two looked really good in the match sim, and I feel like they're gearing up for a really big year.
Awesome. Anything from you, Jake, and in general about those before we move on to the specifics of the new golden giant?
I think Johnny's covered it pretty well. Like, there's a couple of things I suppose I'll add, just specific sort of little points. I'd picked Mitch Nevitt to be my player who grabbed the headlines when Johnny and I did our Patreon match predictions. Unfortunately, just didn't take the game by the scruff of the neck. A lot of time spent chasing behind his player, I thought. But I thought he wasn't the only one that you could accuse of that. It's the first time where I've been on the opposite side of the internet's opinions on Jack Bowes. I was actually quite down on his performance, and the internet was telling me how wrong I was. So that was
John
kind of an
just did
interesting
too,
one, because
so.
last year,
Oh,
yeah, last year it was.
I feel like that first half, it definitely you were in the right there. But as the game went on, he definitely he got better.
Yeah, and look, maybe I was just, the one problem we have when you're live tweeting the game at the same time is you can easily miss things. Like, I'd be the first person to admit that I might be, finishing typing,
And
looking up just as he's done something incredible. But yeah,
and it's not the best camera angle either. It was only one camera's position, and it didn't give the best vantage point
that's what
for
I'll
viewing.
blame.
There's many
Yeah,
things
it's
to blame.
just one of those things.
Is that why you're blaming for everyone else being wrong?
That's exactly. So yeah, look, Mitch Nevitt was a little bit off. I think Tanner Bruin, like Johnny talked about, I think John talked about, like, the disposal efficiency was a bit off, but he was buzzing around winning heaps of the footy. That's what I really loved about watching him, is that he was just involved in everything. You know, if someone needed a quick handoff to get out of trouble, it was Tanner Bruin that had made himself the option. So his ability to just get around and win lots of the ball, I really, really liked. And yeah, his kicking was kind of an adventure, but I liked that late in the game there was a moment where I can't remember whether he won the ball or someone handed it out to him, and he gave a really precise little kick back inboard, and then followed up, sort of running off the outside was the outlet option, and then chipped a nice little kick to someone else. So it was like back to back, two really intelligent kicking decisions from Tanner Bruin. And I just thought that was good to see late in the game, where you could excuse them for being tired and worn out and making a dumb decision. In fact, he made some of his best decisions late in the game. I thought Jai Clark was a little bit off the pace for the first, say, 2.5 quarters. And it was an issue that I'd seen a little bit in the VFL last year, where he just feels like he's got 1.5 seconds to decide what he wants to do. And he's actually only got half a second, and he gets caught either holding the ball, or it's one of those situations where he gets tackled and other players might get a handball out as they're being tackled instead of resulting in a stoppage. However, last quarter, even the last 1.5 quarters, I felt like someone must have got in his ear, or he just realized, I've got to move this on quicker. And he had a couple of disposals that were in the direct lead up to Geelong getting a goal, and then a behind to Shannon Neal. So I think that is what I hope Jai Clark takes out of it, is I have to move it quicker. I do not have as much time as I thought I do, as I think I do. This is a higher level of footy, and I need to make my decision quickly and just back myself that I'm going to make the right one. And if not, I'll learn from it, sort of thing.
Sure. And how much hype do you have for Dempsey beyond that one moment that I've seen going around Instagram, and just the fact that he's packed on some size? like
He,
that's yeah. Where's he at in actual game terms?
I'm personally pretty excited. Like, he's always been smart, and like I feel like the Cats have flirted with putting him in like as a regular starter a few times across his first couple of, like, he debuted year one, he got in the side again a little bit last year. He dominates the VFL, and that's what was cool to see here, was he was dominating this game in a lot of the same ways that he does in the VFL. And it's his versatility that sort of excites me, where you can play him on the wing, you could line him up at center stoppages, you could probably play him off halfback, you could probably play him up in the forward 50, and he just has a skill set that translates around the ground. He's got good instincts for reading the play, whether that's up forward or down back. He's so intelligent. Like, in some ways, he reminds me, and it's always hard when you compare to like great players, but when he has the ball, it reminds me of watching Steve Johnson, in the sense that he sees things that other players don't, and then he also has the disposal skill to get it there. You know, he's
Yeah.
going to be the one who pulls the clever kick shallow across the 50 to a leading target when everyone thinks he's going to go deep. He's just super crafty. And then you combine that with the extra size and physicality he's added, but the marking, the contested mark, like, that's not an anomaly. There's plenty of games you can go back and watch the VFL last season where he was cleaning guys up, taking big contested marks up forward. So I don't know right now where exactly he fits. Like,
That was
what person
my
is going
exact question.
to, like, it's so hard to know, because like, how do you force your way into that forward line? Like, you
Especially
probably
when,
can't.
like, how do you force yourself into a team when you're versatile too? Like, it's the drawback of being versatile sometimes, is you don't have that calling card where someone just goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
we need up in the air aerial marking. That's what we're
Mm,
lacking. Get him in." Like,
yeah.
when you can kind of do all of it pretty well, it's
Mm,
almost like it almost can hurt your chances of being noticed and sort of really recognized as
mm.
a solution to a problem. Like, do you think, I can't remember if he was one of the names we floated earlier in the preseason when we were talking about future replacements. Do you think he is possibly like someone that could work into the the Blixav's role? Like, is he
in
someone
a
that could
in a
get
weird
there? Because he
way.
just because he's versatile, like he's that
Yeah.
he's not necessarily role as in physically where he'd start a
Mm.
game, say, but in terms of being able to roll around and be a lot of different things, like, do you think he has the ability to be like a lockdown player if we need, the way Blix can, where you're like, oh, you started the game as this, but we need you to take them out of it?
Um, I don't know. I guess it's more like the defensive part of his game. I've just seen traits in the VFL that's made me
Mm,
go, he could do this thing. Like
yeah.
it was his intercept marking in the game. I remember he just kept floating across and chopping kicks off in the midfield. And it was the
Hmm.
first time I'd looked at him and gone, oh wow, I could see you repurposed into that backline brigade, how they have
Mm,
done with a lot of players. So I don't know if they think about him in that regard, but I just definitely saw some attributes that I was like, that'd translate. I mean, I'm just looking on his Wikipedia page. He's listed at 6'2". Like he's not a short player.
right.
That's what's kind of cool about him is that he's got a versatile kind of physical, sort of attributes in that he's not, a skinny player. He's not a small player. He's relatively tall and also highly mobile. Um, I think there's some Brian Myers about him in that he's probably the player you want being the distributor. You want him hitting guys up inside 50. The one thing I would say, and I know there's lots of grind people, I'm not saying he's a better player than Brian Myers or anything like that. The one thing I would say is if he can take his VFL goal kicking into the AFL, he adds a different dimension than what Myers has like last season, because I think he was Geelong's leading goal kicker last year in the VFL.
Mm,
So I think you're ultimately probably going to see him line up either on the wing. If they maybe decided to play Holmes down back and they're like, we need someone on the wing, I could see Ollie Dempsey. I'd probably play Ollie Dempsey on the wing now ahead of Mitch Nevitt. I don't know if I would have had that before the season started, but I think that's where I'd rank
sure.
them now. I could also see him forcing his way in half forward or something as well. But yeah, I'm super excited about him. I think they are too. They were excited when they drafted him.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
definitely.
remember. Yeah. Well, we've been on
Sorry, I waffled on a bit there, lads.
no, no, no. It's awesome. Like, I feel like
Good
it
waffle.
wasn't waffle. It was good, actual, insightful, and interesting stuff, as opposed to, it's just because I don't want to just recap the game, because if people want to
Yeah.
watch the game,
Mm,
presumably they watch the game.
I
And
will
so what I was,
say
what were
one
you
thing
going to
about Myers,
Yeah.
that grind Myers, is I was very excited
mm.
when he kicked 2 goals, and he could have also got 2 assist goals with those goals. But he went himself. He got those goals
Yes.
himself, and
Yes.
they weren't just open directly in front goals, easy goals. One was like
Mhm.
far on the boundary, 50 meters out, and he's got it. And then the other one, I can't remember what the other one was, but both goals were not easy
Mm.
goals. And he just went, I'm going to kick this. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is what we're talking about. This is what we want to see from Grind. It's him taking that on himself, kicking more goals himself, but also setting up a few more. So I was pretty happy when he did that. I was like, you beauty. Keep doing that, Grind. 2
Oh,
goals a game
Mm.
by Grind Myers, and then like 3, 4 assists a game. That's a lot of goals
mm,
just off him.
yeah,
So
very, very.
stoked.
That's very good. Very exciting for him from a point of view of, more of the same, but maybe a little extra,
A little bit
from,
more
yeah,
selfish.
direct goal, yeah. Which is, I think it was possibly even you, John, that was saying it when we were talking about what we want to see. That was one of the things you were asking to see
Yeah.
from him specifically. So we've been on the general recap of this for like half an hour now. So I think, uh, rather than risk getting too boring and minute on it, I feel like maybe we'll do some speed rounds now a little bit.
Ooh,
So I
Sure.
want to throw just to you guys and just as quick as you can. Basically, positive, negative, how you felt about this thing. And there's probably going to be areas of the ground, and then I'm going to move into just players. Just going to throw some player
all right.
names out there. Do you want to take one each, and I'll go between you, and you just one person
Yeah,
talks
one
about it?
each. I reckon
One
one each.
each. All right. Well, we talked about the ruck. I'll start with you, Jake. How do you feel about the back line?
Really good. Sam De Koning looks super confident again with his intercept marking. Likewise, Zach Guthrie. Obviously, likewise, Tom Stewart. Still probably have like some concerns. Kolajasny makes me really nervous sometimes, but overall, I I feel really good that the back line is just going to be not what it necessarily was last season because it was a bit up and down. I think it's going to get back to playing really well at a consistent level.
Good. Did we learn anything? That's what I want. Sorry, tack that on. After all of these, was there anything new about this? Did you learn anything about the back line?
That Tom Stewart's going to play in it? No, I don't know. Like, who knows?
Yeah, that'll do. Yeah.
Based off the match sim, like, yeah, and what did I learn? I would
It
just
doesn't have to be
say
anything.
we
Like
have
what you
so
said
many.
kind of covers it, but it's just an angle I want to
Yeah.
look at
All
it
right.
with
That's
these quick fire
that's it.
rounds.
Yeah.
General. And so with you, John, we'll skip past the
Yep.
midfield, going all the way up to the forward line. How'd you feel about the
Lovely.
forward line, and did you learn anything from the game?
Yeah, loved seeing that forward line hum nicely especially without Hawkins and Cameron in there for most of the game. As Jake said, Hawkins played the first quarter, kicked a couple really nice goals, and he looked as fit as he's ever been. He moved across that ground really nicely, took a couple of really good marks, outsmarted his opponent like he always does, out wrestled them. Jeremy Cameron, I don't think he kicked one goal on the run.
One
Absolutely
amazing goal.
just a brilliant, ridiculous goal. And then he was sort of floating up more in the midfield. Just, I feel like, as I said, Jeremy, you do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter. Match him. Just go out there, play, come back off when you want. Didn't really see much of Cameron. And then Ollie Henry, Shannon Neal, they looked solid. And it gives a lot of hope for the future. And then Close and Grind Myers with a dynamic self looking really dangerous as well. I feel like the forward line looked dangerous, and there's a whole lot of upside with that forward line with Oliver Henry coming in the way he did last year, setting up a really good foundation for himself and bracing himself for a big year. And then Shannon Neal, just in the background, still building up his body, still building up that conditioning and his strength and his, you know, apart from that, his marking was really good. As I said, his goal kicking's pretty solid. And the rest of the guys in there were really just feel like they got back to that 2022 form nearly. Like Tyson Stengel looked really good, the man he played, which wasn't a whole lot, but he kicked a couple of goals, I think. And Gary Ron wasn't there. He's had a bit of a back complaint, so they didn't risk him. But
Back complaint. And didn't he
overall,
also just have another kid?
yeah. So that's
Yeah, I think
probably it.
That'll do.
That
That'll do.
complaint is the child.
Yeah, I've got a child on my back.
But yeah, the future of the Cats forward line is very exciting. And
All right,
got
and
players to watch out for.
very good. Jake, obvious next step. Midfield. What did you feel like? What did it make you feel? Did you learn anything about that midfield? Probably not, because it's match sim.
Yeah, no. Midfield. What did I learn about the midfield? What did I think about the midfield? Positive note, I felt like our spread away from the contest was really good. Like I felt like we actually, found space really quickly. Now, part of that might be the fact that it was a match sim and no one could be bothered chasing and sort of, marking up their player. But Geelong spread away from clearances really well and with a lot of speed. Thought Tanner Bruin was a big part of that. Thought Patrick Dangerfield looked in really good shape. Tom Atkins seems to now have elevated himself into that next tier of player. Like I know Brian Taylor midway through the flag year was like, oh, right on the fringe is Tom Atkins. He's not on the fringe anymore. He's an auto pick player. No mustache, unfortunately, at the moment, clean shaven. But he does look sort of hard and lean, even without the facial hair. So those three players, like, highly encouraging. Add in like Mark Blixarves.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is a mystery that will unfold over the course of the season. That's what I feel like I've sort of learned, is that the Cats are gonna. We're in for a mystery thriller sort of thing, and it's going to twist and turn, and the success or failure of it is probably going to come on the back of what sort of ways in which these players develop. Like your Clarks, your Nevets, even to an extent, Max Holmes. Like, you know, if he can really lock down a specific spot, if he can improve his kicking, Bowes, who was I saying? Clark, Bowes, Nevitt. There's another one I'm missing, but basically, it's going to come down a lot to whether those guys, to what direction and at what speed those players develop. Because as we're going to talk about in the Patreon section, it's possible that you get a worst case scenario with some of your experienced players, and those guys are going to be thrust into the limelight. But the spread from contest was really heartening, and now we've just got to see if that was a one-off match sim, product of a match sim.
Sure, and again, alluding to what you were just talking about, Jake, what we're going to talk about in the Patreon, and sticking with the midfield. But just briefly, Johnny, without going into too much of the impact on the future, like the season. Cam Guthrie, how did he look while he was out there?
For the 8 seconds that he was out there, he looked fantastic.
Cool. That's good. That's moving on. Like, was he able to do anything? Like did he get
got the ball
disposal
and sprinted from the center ball inside 50, and then that was it.
Jesus Christ! All right,
that was it. Like the first, I think my tweet was
first disposal.
And Cam Guthrie's in the hands of the trainers, and I'm ready for cricket season.
Okay. Well, at least that was an easy answer. You spoke at Tyson Stengel was one of the ones I wanted to ask you about. I'll give you another one, Johnny, because that one was so brief. Sam de Koning.
Yeah, as Jake said earlier, he looked back to his 2022 self. He looked confident. He looked ready to go. He barely got beaten again, and just looked himself, his dynamic self, where he was uber confident and backed himself going to every contest. And part of that was having Tom Stewart, Oliver Dempsey back there as well, Kola Jasny, Zach Tui, Max Holmes there as well. Jack Henry was back. I think having Jack Henry, Tom Stewart, gave him that confidence to know he's got two super solid, super reliable teammates backing him up. And he just looked free. He just looked like he was able to do what he wanted to do, instead of fearing that if he went and did what he wanted to do, he would stuff up and it'll be a goal. This time he went and did it, and it came off most times. So yeah, I feel like he's
awesome.
Again, he's set for another good year. As long as we can keep that defense solid and strong, he will have a fantastic year. But also, even if not, I think last year would have put himself a bit more like that idea of, say, Stewart's not there or Henry's not there, he can still back himself to do what he needs to do, because he is much better when he's intercepting and going in third man up as well.
Awesome. Jake, I was going to ask Tom Stewart, but I think you kind of covered it. Like, the back line looked good. Tom Stewart was doing Tom Stewart things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
The one of my favorite. I was just gonna say one of the best passages of play of the day was a Tom Stewart mark in the back 50, a handoff to Atkins, who kicked it long to a 2-on-1 out number. It was Shannon Neal and Toby Conway on one Carlton player. Neal took the mark. I think he handed it to Holmes, and that was the kick that resulted in the one-handed Ollie Henry mark. Can't remember if he kicked the goal. I think he did. That was pretty spicy, but
something for the highlights reel.
Sorry, I've just had to get that in there because it was for the sizzle reel for
sure.
It
was a spicy meatball.
Did Mitch Hardy get a run?
No, not that I saw. There are a few names who, if they got a run, I didn't really see what they did. Ted Closey being one. So how the game was, it was 8 periods of play. The first 4 were AFL listed. The second 4, my understanding, was VFL plus guys who didn't get a big run in the AFL game. So didn't really see. We didn't see James. No, not in the AFL section. I certainly didn't notice him. Viewers and listeners might correct us, but no Mitch Hardy, no Phoenix Foster, no James Willis, no Ted Closey. Yeah.
All right, last couple. Okay, I don't think we need to go through the whole friggin' list. But just really quick. Johnny Dangerfield.
Yeah.
Good.
Looked
bad.
Fantastic.
Okay.
I reckon he looked really good. He came in for a bit in the second quarter, dominated, and kicked
a nice goal.
Kicked a nice goal and looked strong. He looked really strong and fit, and was moving across that ground like it was a horse running across a nice flat paddock, just galloping across there nicely.
Perfect.
So he's looking fantastic.
Jake, I've got a package deal for you. The Irish contingent. Anyone of note getting a run and doing anything noteworthy from the Irish lads?
Mark O'Connor doing like what he normally does, like will be in the side all 24, 25 weeks of the season. Many will call for his head. We won't exactly explain what it is that's keeping him there, but he'll continue to do it, and the coaching staff will continue to appreciate it. Like Mark O'Connor was just, consistently Mark O'Connor. Zach Tui, nothing really stands out, if I'm honest. From his game,
that could be a good thing.
I'm interested to see. Exactly. Sometimes no news is good news. Oisin Mullen, I thought, probably struggled to get involved a bit, is what I would say. He sort of floated around a lot, was sort of nearby the action. Like the only things that really come to mind, he almost took a brilliant intercepting mark, just couldn't hold it in his hands, just used his closing speed to nearly sort of jump a route, as you would call it in the NFL. Just couldn't cling it. And then there was just a nice quick hand pass in traffic, but that was all that really stood out. But I think Oisin Mullen's just a development prospect. I think I put a tweet out saying physically he's there. He's an AFL player from that point of view. He's strong enough, big enough, fast enough, all that. It's now, can you put together the other stuff? Can you learn a new sport? And yeah, he didn't break out by any stretch of the imagination, but he probably wasn't involved enough to be making any massive gaps, I suppose, is what I would say.
Might be a bit of a similar trajectory to Kearns over in the W. Might be maybe his sort of like, might be a third season where he really starts to put it all together and kind of, because I feel like that was season just gone was Kearns' third, wasn't it? Second year, but third season because of the A and B seasons. So. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, that makes sense to me.
Although there was massive injury interruptions as well, but in general, I think third season was towards the back half of that season really started to see her put all the sort of the pieces together that were already there individually.
And as we've talked about on the podcast before, it's not always like it's the right role for the right player. Like not everyone comes in and slots into the first role you designate them, and they just they go like a house on fire. Like Kearns tried, they tried her out in a few different spots. Sometimes you got to play with it for a while and go, where is we know there's skill and talent there. Where are we best going to deploy that? What? Yeah. So I think
speaking of,
there's no reason to flip out about O'Shea Mullen not having like 25 touches at this point in his career.
But speaking of skill and talent, but where will it manifest? Did Brandon Parfitt get a run?
He did.
Not in the AFL that I saw.
Not in the AFL, no.
Okay. I didn't see him in the AFL one.
I don't remember seeing him. Yeah.
Maybe he may have, but he didn't.
No.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't noteworthy. All right. Well, that was the one I was curious about. That was the last one I was going to give to Johnny. Instead, I'll pull a carrot out of the hat with no rabbit attached. Zach Guthrie, the Guthrie that didn't get injured.
Yeah. Can he play midfield?
Yeah. Look at what his prospects like.
He's
he doing what he does.
He was doing what he does. He was looking sensational. He's mini Tom Stewart. He's on Tom Stewart leaves. He just looks fantastic. He was everywhere. Everything he did was pretty much spot on, and no complaints.
Awesome.
Like, he'll be in that team round one, and he will be doing what Zach Guthrie does. And he's put on a bit more muscle as well, which is always fantastic to see. But yeah, he's just starting off where he finished last year and the year before.
Awesome. Well, look, I think unless there's anything you guys want to add, we've managed to fill 50 odd minutes with talk of the scintillating and devastatingly important match sim.
Oh yes, good job.
Just a really defining clash for the 2024.
Yeah. We've seen it. Like, I honestly don't even know if we need to go and watch the season now. Like, I feel like it's just we
may as well just
stuff.
We may as well just wait till the grand final.
Yeah,
and
I'll see you in 2025 for the match sim.
Imagine that. Maybe the Chaps should just go to being a match sim only podcast. We do one every 12 months.
Sim. Yeah. It's a glorious and prestigious event like the Oscars. Everyone will tune in for our
match sim
annual match sim.
That's how we're packaging it next year. It's going to be a black tie event. The Chaps match sim recap.
I'd like to talk to the rest of the Hoops crew about how they feel about our end of the bargain being just one episode a year. You guys keep us going, and then we'll see you in we'll see you early next year. All right, Jake. Send us into the Patreon. I pass the gloves back over to you.
Massive effort from Sam. I like the positional switch, Johnny. I thought that was fresh. That gave us a fresh angle. It was. I liked his ability to think on his feet. I don't know if he'd done hours of prep before that, but it certainly seemed
How dare you assume I had not?
Had a good... definitely not an assumption.
I was assuming it was.
Okay. Well, John was an assumption on John's part.
Poorly formed, in my opinion.
All right. Before we jump over into the Patreon, what we're going to do on the Patreon part of the show, we're going to discuss basically worst case scenario, nuclear fallout scenarios. If there's bad news on Cam Guthrie's injury, if it lingers, basically like who we think will step up, who should step up, who needs to step up, and basically, what it could mean for our season. Right now, we don't really know the severity of the injury, and we don't know what lingering effects these things can have on players. As we said, like with Guthrie last year, it was just a foot injury that just refused to heal itself up, by all reports. So we're going to talk about that. So if you want to hear us talk about that, go on over and subscribe to the Hoops Crew Patreon channel. You definitely need to get in on that. You also should go over and join up with the Hoops Crew free tipping competition in 2024. They're running it again. So if you go over to the Hoops Crew's Twitter page, Ben's got that posted up there. So go and join, tip against us. Got a great tipping show coming to you ahead of the opening round. Danders, don't forget your tips. You got to tune in and watch that one. So that'll be a great show. I think that's going to be on a Wednesday every week. That'll do it for us now, though. We're going to go over to the Patreon subscribers. Last little shout out. I know one of our regular Twitter followers and listeners is waging a battle with the Rona right now. So thinking of you. Know you're working your way through a bunch of the Cats grand final victories on YouTube and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a bollocks of a thing to be sick at this time of year, and particularly with lots of fun events to be attending. So hope you get better swiftly. But yeah, just wanted to shout out there. That's it. We're going. We'll be back on Thursday night with a preview of Cats v the Bombers. Not a match sim, a pre-season game, so the stakes only get higher. Until next time, go Cats!
Go Cats!
Go Cats!